of veto motion C. So we're debating the motion on this house believes that the power of music has now declined rather than increased from the 20th century. Let's introduce the wonderful panels who will be judging with me, Haruto, who is going to be the chair. We have Raymond. Okay. I don't know, Raymond. Okay, soon. He's okay. And we have Dennis.
I'm Dennis from Mod, that's not one for the teams.
And we have Kusaka-san.
Hi, this is Kusaka. I hope engine number wrong.
And we have Yuichiro-san.
I'm Yuichiro from Tsukuba. I'm very happy to judge this one.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for so we are going to be judging with these great judges. So let's begin the debate. Calling upon first Prime Minister. Here.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm recording my speech as well. The 1986 EDSA Philippine Revolution and folk nationalistic music, the umbrella, green, purple revolutions in Eastern Europe and religious music and poetry, the civil rights movement and jazz, the hippie movement against the Vietnam War and the Beatles, and also the thousands of people that went to the White House to try and broadcast this music in ways in which the police could not stop them in overwhelming ways. We define and talk about this debate specifically with respect to music being transformative and powerful. Music is transformative because it is grassroots. It is grounded in constructive and counterculture realities. It is written in a way that is done in experience, in contradiction through your agency against other institutions that are powerful. And it is also a mass collective experience to the extent in which you had agency over the production, consumption, and the diverse sharing process that you had. What we say is that all the flawed definitions of power of music that opposition may give are not necessarily indicators of the power of music. This is true for a few reasons. Number one, more consumption of music doesn't mean it is more transformative or powerful politically, nor does it mean that it is also democratic. 20th century music, for example, was defined by counterculture music that was much more disproportionate and more difficult to regulate by state institutions. You couldn't, for example, regulate online the music that would be distributed through algorithms in the way social media companies do right now. Two, there are more diverse ways of sharing music or having different music. Doesn't necessarily mean it is necessarily embedded or integrated within social and political lives of individuals in a particular way that individuals might consume music individually, but they might not share it with more individuals in a way that is beyond the Spotify top 100 list that you might have, or beyond the Billboard top 100, for example, because it's more mainstream and more commercialized. Three, more time being a music niche person for niche collective music doesn't mean that music is necessarily powerful to more individuals, because it might be consumed individually for their own cathartic experience, but that's not the power of music in the way it was done in the 20th century, because this debate is about the 20th century power in the way it increased or declined. And so we say that that particular power represented, for example, through broadcast music, through radio music, in ways in which it were much harder to do so because you had to look for a radio wave that other people could not necessarily buy and consume by monopolistic companies that the state otherwise would want to regulate, or for example, do it through the underground where otherwise you're able to collectivize and also share music in a way that was more personal and more experiential because you could see each other in person and you trusted each other in person because you were with each other in person and you were dancing with each other in person. That does not happen necessarily even if opposition says the online social media allows them to democratize that to a certain extent. And lastly, sharing music also doesn't necessarily mean that it is powerful, because people might receive music in different ways, and especially with respect to the fact that the way in which they interpret that music can also necessarily be different, especially in contradiction to the way the 20th century defined how powerful music was in the way it was interpreted. There were big cults of personality around big bands that would be able to try and promote big collective action movements, like the Live Aid concert, for example, where they collectivized in an effort to try and destigmatize gay individuals in the process of sharing music that was also pro-LGBT. So, having said this, what I'll do now is I'll focus on three mechanisms of this debate. No, thank you. And I will explain why each and every mechanism in the way in which music has changed has undermined the personal agency with respect to the production, consumption, and sharing process of music. So the first part is going to be the traditional to modern music and the way in which it undermines our agency with respect to the way that we like and listen and share to music. Two, I'm going to talk about how the way in which we communicate music in commercial ways is dominated exploited by labels and also studios. And 3, I'm going to talk about technology and AI and how it has undermined creativity in a way that is also going to disproportionately beat out the competition in the future in ways in which are going to be regressive. Firstly, on traditional and modern media and the way in which we like and consume and share music, there are a few mechanisms in which technology in particular has undermined our personal agency. Again, let's be clear on what power of music is. Broadcast music, collective music, in-person protest music, for example, when you listen to it, you have no control over the way in which you pause, play, and share that music because you are out there in public, you hear it, you can't consent or opt out of that conversation because it's so loud, it is so powerful, and because you're part of a community of many individuals that want to listen to that music. It is very cathartic because it's very personal, because you see someone's reaction, you see them crying in front of you. If I can prove that the extent to which you consume music is disproportionately done through screens, through technology, through social media, and it undermines the way in which you experience music in that way, then it also undermines the political motivations in which individuals also participate with music because they necessarily do not interact with the person, with actual organizations or other individuals in which they are able to mobilize and act on their emotions now. When you're in a protest movement in the Washington, D.C., when you're with the hippie movement fighting against the Vietnam War, you listen to music together in a way that particularly was cathartic because you were with each other, struggling with each other, knowing that you were risking with each other in that particular moment. That cannot happen now for a few reasons. One, because social media undermines you through social isolation and political polarization in a way in which the music you choose is mediated through algorithms, it is mediated by recommendation channels that is given to you, and you don't necessarily have control over the way in which you consume or choose that music. And also furthermore, it also undermines you because of addiction, because you consume music individually in a way in which there's so much more music and there's so much choices in music that you don't necessarily have to interpret each and every music for the purposes that it might have. It might have more mainstream pop culture music, but it doesn't have this transformative effect in which you create cults of communities that are non-commercial but also more public and more likely to be more counterculture. Secondly, because the way in which it is also redirected through algorithms. And 3, because it creates independent cults and fandoms that also have to consume themselves by depriving themselves of further agency. When you consume a concert, when you consume a K-pop merch, for example, from Hybe, not only do you entrench existing monopolies and oligopolies from those studios who weaponize intellectual property, for example, in these instances, it also undermines your agency too. Yes?
If physical interaction with people is very important, the in-person life is increasing in our century. Therefore, we can achieve your goal more.
Sorry, the last part, when you say the impulse?
In-person life is more.
The impulse on life is more?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we say is that the impulse through protests and movements, the empathy gap is mediated through echo chambers, and it's much more heightened on your world, especially through social media. That's what our argument does. But furthermore, I want to say a few things on this, right? Labels and studios weaponize it through the way in which they utilize intellectual property laws, through royalty-free music, through the way in which you have to pay penalties to use this. Studios, for example, before, like the Abbey Road studios, for example, were relatively more independent. They had less control from regulatory institutions because they necessarily did not have to control entire other media spaces like YouTube, Spotify, the distribution channels of music. Radio was relatively more democratic because it was much harder to regulate radio wave channels, for example, or even in public, in protest, you don't have necessarily the way in which surveillance right now, we get to track and see and hear what you listen on social media too. So all of these ways in which it undermines your personal agency with respect to this music is also particularly harmful. So for these reasons, because we believe that music is not democratized in the way it is, I'm very proud to propose.
Okay, I thank PM for that wonderful remark. Now to open the case for a side of opposition, let's invite the leader of the opposition, Kenya.
So I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So the two arguments in the speech. Firstly, accessibility leads to the power. Two, accessibility, why that we can people to be able to find their own personal music, and also which also makes the people feel power and in this way. But obviously on the side, Firstly, how the 20th century, the music actually looks like. Obviously, we told you it is far more likely it's also global. That means even in living in India or in Africa, you can access the K-pop music, for example, on our side has. But secondly, I also point out there's massive technology as well, and PM already considered this point. For example, Spotify or the YouTube, which actually gives the platform for the individual to actually the dreams, for example, on our side has too. But secondly, I want to be very, very clear much about this debate. Firstly, within accessibility also gives the power. It's very, very clear because if you can access this music, you can actually go to the concert, for example, you're likely to feel so emotional moment in the first place. That means I would suggest you also give the enormously empowered in the daily livelihood. That I would suggest this is also can be the power, to give the motivation for the future and also has. But secondly, I also pointed out the diversification of the music is also gives the power as well. For example, if you can find the niche artist, for example, you'll be able to find the the meaning in life. For example, you also like validate your plan of that music artist in the first place. That means I would suggest diversification leads to the power and our side has. With that being said, on the reflection, notice the reason sharing is not just about the the sharing is not the necessarily means the power as it suggests, but this is not the only purpose of the music in the first place. Also, you can find the best music artists in the first place, right? For example, because of the algorithm, you're likely to find the niche artists, for example, in the Spotify. That's why even though therefore it says you can likely to find the music artists which actually match your preference to some extent. Secondly, though, I also point out still that in-person interaction exists even on the our side has. This is not just obviously products exist on our side. I also point out that you can go to the enjoy the human interaction with the K-pop star. It's unlikely you just enjoy the music just not in the SNS or the listening to it by their own earphone. I would suggest that you can access this interaction on our side to some extent. That's why we can actively undercut accessibility on the opening government. Firstly, why we can guarantee far more accessibility for this music on the ground. There are three reasons for this. First, on democratization, and there are two layers. Firstly, we can actually we will be able to give a platform for you to make the music on our service. For instance, the YouTube, for example, the Sony, for example, there's massive music industry like it exists on our service too. Obviously, because of the fact that this internet have already developed and consumed many of the data, that's why I suggest you can access these tools for free on our side has. But secondly, I also point out this, you can access a lot of the tools, right? For example, even don't have exactly the violin, for example, the guitar, which is so expensive, but you can try to make that violin sounds by their own computer, for example. That also, even if you have no such beautiful voices, but you can try to make that the better voices by their own technology. I suggest therefore, even if you have no unique on our side, we can make the individual capable enough to to make their own artists on our side with us too. But by contrast, on their side, this technology doesn't exist. You don't have if you don't have any beautiful voices, you cannot do this. I'd also point out that if guitar is so expensive, you cannot have no capacity to buy this guitar and their style of the house. That means I suggest we can expand the accessibility of this music to a far more extent. Secondly, I also point out we can get, because working class people now get the richer compared to 1990s, and therefore I suggest individuals to be able to capable of the consuming this music on our service. For example, you can try to engage with the subscription services, which might be expensive, but we can expand the volume of the working class people compared to 100 years ago on their side of the house. By contrast, these people have to work in many people continue to poor on their side. Obviously, there's no technology. That's why on their side you have no capacity to engage with subscription services on their side has, because it is enormously expensive. But lastly, I just also point out because of globalization in the 20th century, we can make this this music is far more accessible to the many people on the ground. For example, capable star like we come to Japan more frequently, or even Asia, we can actually lower the barrier to entry for the people to access this music on our side with us. By contrast, on their side, you might be access the Beatles in the one time in the 5 years, but that's it, right? But you can know whether or not K-pop star exists on their side. I also point out the industry cannot capture the demand of the K-pop star on their side has. That means I would suggest the people in the artists is enormously hesitate to go to that area on their side. By contrast, globalization uniquely removed the barrier to entry for these artists to come to Japan or come to around the world in this debate. That's why we can make this art enormously accessible in this debate. Why do we think this very crucial? Why do we think this really gives the power in the first place? Because if you can access this music, you're likely to feel this enormous sense of the excitement. For example, if you can go to K-pop star, even though you're not interested in the K-pop star, but still you think these very beautiful things, because obviously not only you but your surrounding people also cheer these K-pop stars up. For example, that means I suggest accessibility makes people feel power on our side with us too. Okay, so this is first argument, but before that, sure.
Most artists have to also comply with regulations and are also overwhelmed to produce more songs that are poppy and mainstream because of the race to the bottom and how easily artists are also bought out by other companies. They are commodified into products in your world.
Yeah, but that's your word. The reason for this is because on our side, many individuals have a massive bargaining power and they try to collectivize this on our surface. Because many people can opt into this, that's why they try to market their own technique on our side. That's why I would suggest we can enable people to have the more bargaining power to that industry as they suggest in display. But okay, secondly, why we can guarantee the far more diversification of the artists in general and why we can enable them to find the meaning in life. There are several reasons for this. And note that this is not the exactly cookie cutter mechanism to prove the diversification increase. We are going to prove the uniqueness as to why 21st century the exactly makes uniquely diversified art on our surface. Several reasons for this. First, because we can guarantee make the opportunity for you to make the niche music on our surface. The reason for this is because we can actually, even on their side, even if you make the niche artist, you can't find such a niche fan on their side. There's no algorithm. By contrast, on our side, because algorithm, obviously, even if you can certainly meet that such a niche fan on our side has in the first place, right? That's why I would suggest because the algorithm is to be able to find the best music style which is matched to you, and therefore I suggest we can now create an incentive to make this art to a far more extent. But secondly, I also pointed out that you can copy that old version of the music. For example, you can actively by using technology, you can try to incorporate the jazz element into the new music in the first place. That's why I would suggest because of the increase in technology level, we can make this artist enormously make the music far more likely to diversify at the end of the day. But still the reason for this because there's much competition here, because obviously on our side, many working class people can opt into this music industry. It is much more easier for them to do this. That means I suggest we can enable individual to actualize the dream to a far more extent. Therefore, this necessarily creates a huge diversification here. Why diversification actually gives the power in the way? Because obviously, you can actually find the music which actually matches your preference. When you break up, you are likely to find the best music in the first place. That's why I suggest this diversification matters. We oppose.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader Hall, for that wonderful remark. Now to continue the case for side government, let's invite Deputy Prime Minister.
Power of music is not only about individual empowerment, but rather collective shared unification through music. Consuming music as a fan doesn't mean you're exercising privilege or power, because A, you're influenced to spend money, but B, you are chained to addiction. I think in their side paradigm, insofar as they weren't able to answer the question onto how the commercialization degrade the meaning of the music, I don't think they are able to win this round. Because I think the problem opposition side is they talked about the enjoyment of the music, probably they can feel resonated more, but I think that they wasn't able to connect to how the power of music it is. I think the enjoyment doesn't necessarily transfer to the power of music as we already characterized. That's the reason why I think the opposition side doesn't able to prove their impact, not relevant in the debate. Then, first thing I want to say here is about the accessibility, because I think this is the biggest push coming from opposition side. Opposition side talk about how the accessibility leads to the diversification, that they are able to resonate more. I don't think this is the cases in particularly in opposition side paradigm, particularly the context of the commercialization. The first thing I want to prove here is that the commercialization makes it worse. Commercialization art degrade the meaning of the degrade the meaning of the the music. I think the intuition here is that the TikTokification of the music happening. These music are more likely to post in the buzzing and the social media. For example, YouTube Short or Instagram. I think it's very understandable to see the current Japanese music. For example, like QT Street talking about Pretty Cute. I don't think there is like strong meaning onto how this lyrics looks like. That's the reason why I think these commercialization are able to degrade the meaning. I think that they're more likely to be sound well, stuff like that, compared to like just what is the anger people have, what is the problem that they have, what is going against injustices. That's the reason why I think these TikTokification, commercialization are less meaning, less giving the power to the people. But secondly, I think just under just the technological algorithm or being independent artists is more difficult because your content will likely be more regulated to be more mainstream, because like in order to get that attention from a wider world, but precisely because they try to argue like they are able to get the wider range of the people, which basically means that they have to compromise to the mainstream in order to get the in order to get the attention, in order to get the money, stuff like that. That's the reason why I think there's that's the reason why I think the music likely to be regulated into the more mainstream. But secondly, I think the independent artists have to collaborate with other influencers to commercialize themselves further. But thirdly, so much music is being produced as they characterize as a competitive, so that the adoption of AI or adoption of technology makes it harder for you to produce succeed. Then in that instances, I think it is difficult for people to as a structurally produce the meaningful music that cater and that have the significant meaning for the people. Besides, I think they try to argue opt-in makes collectivization, but I don't think so, because I think that there is a diverse need for the people in this particular century. Because I think in the past, like 20th century, people have the basic common interest or common angle for the particular things. For example, black people are asking for the black light. For example, feminist movement try to asking for the political participation of the women. I think these needs are diversified currently. For example, like one woman want to pursue career, one woman want to being the housewife, stuff like that. I think this diversification of the needs of the people and the various individualistic trends in the current situation aren't able to have the collectivization structurally. That's the reason why, even though there is able to opt into the music, I don't think they're able to suggest that these opting leads to the collectivization in the very first place. For those reasons, we already told you how commercialization degrades the meaning of the music, as well as the individualistic nature of the current trend, individualism that happening in current situation, prevent them from having the collectivized power of the music. Then the thing that I want to say here is that the individual catharsis is less important compared to the connection of the connection through the music. The first reason for this is that the individual catharsis get certain extent in our self paradigm as well. Even if it's not the best music or best suited music that they try to argue. Like for example, that we cannot probably, even if we don't have like very niche music, niche lyrics, at least able to prove is that there is certain level of connection or certain level of catharsis are able to get through music. For example, like some kind of the music talking about how you love your family, how you love your partner, how sad to break up, stuff like that. I think these common experiences likely to be shared in our self paradigm as well. I don't think they're able to provide this niche preference or niche experience, very specific experiences needed to have the power. But secondly, I think expressing the anger or seeing the meaning in the music is something more important. I mean, it's more give the power to the music. For example, the music will be the anthem to start up, themes to going against, ignite people, protest, and resonate towards the people's feeling, towards the anger the people have. That's the reason why I think the particular context of how the music are able to ignite people to going against, have their themes to the social movement. I think this is the particular moment we are able to say that music have a power, and I think that this is not likely to. This is not happen in their style paradigm. Insofar as the music is divided, insofar as the music is divided and individualism, personalized, and they are unable to characterize. That's the reason why we have to focus on the music that focus on the meaning that music have, how they're able to share the experiences and characterize the experiences through the music. Then the last thing I want to prove here is that last thing I want to say here is that they talk about before that.
So why in 20th century the people cannot collectivize the advice of the music in the social movement?
because like we already told you like how the commercialization, decrease the meaning of the people, as well as talking about how this content is likely to be personalized more. That's the reason why I think the type of music that people consume is different. That's why I think that it's difficult for people to access to a similar type of music. That's divide the people to access like single theme of the music. That's the case. That's the reason I think that their POI doesn't work. The last thing I want to say is that the in-person interaction they talked about, I think the power, although probably that they're able to suggest like in-person experience increase, but what we want to say here that even if it's a bit more localized, I think we still have the in-person interaction, and I think the localized interaction is more important because I think they share the similar experiences more compared to like the global people like sharing the different background, the different context. That's why we have to prioritize our argument. But second thing I want to say here is that the connection is very important compared to just having a fan like going live at a concert and having like, wow, this like artist is cool, stuff like that, that's sharing like bad music, stuff like that. We want to suggest that having the resonate feeling, having the anthem is more powerful, more important than just having the enjoyment of music. That's the reason why we stand for the GOV.
Right, thank you very much DPM for that wonderful remark. Now to continue the case for a side competition, let's invite Deputy Leader of Opposition. Get here.
Hello. Okay. じゃあ行きますね。Okay, thank you everybody. 4 arguments. Firstly, power of music definition. Secondly, transformative power, which they say. Thirdly, impact of diversity and accessibility. Fourthly, very excellent argument about the power of music will be amplified through nostalgia, legendary atmosphere. If we consider their power of music is large, that will be amplified by the power of time. Therefore, by definition, it will be increased. Then let me explain one by one. First of all, definition of the power of music. Government wanted it to be the transformative one or the live experiences, something like that. But I have 3 things to say. First of all, there's no info slide to articulate what is the meaning of power of music. This means it should be in the first place diverse, because definition of the power is very diverse, right? Power can be anything. Like you are moved by those kind of live experiences, you are moved by the consumption. Therefore, they should bite the bullet. Our definition is also true. It is parallel. Therefore, I will flip, I will add those kind of things. This is more strategic way. Secondly, they just try to speak it of consumption. But consumption is also power. Because of commercialization, you feel power from songs. That a good example is QT something. Like QT something is talking about like glorification of lookism, justification of lookism. That will like empower the girl who feel lookism, who suffer from lookism, who want to be look cuter. That's enough. That's why they will listen to the songs. That's why they will share these songs to the other people. That's why that people go to the live stream, that live over the QT street, something like that. Consumption it also includes power. Therefore, they cannot just evade just talking about very EPL languages like consumption is not power. Consumption itself is very stronger power, which is very tangible in our side. You should evaluate this. Secondly, I'm kind enough to concede formative power from their side, but I'm so good. 2 arguments why our side also have formative power. First of all, in-person interactive concert music is more on our side for 2 reasons. Firstly, like commercialization, accessibility, those kind of mechanisms exist. Therefore, K-pop idol or idol have more power to commercialize those kind of things. Therefore, it is likely. Secondly, people capacity to go to concert is more compared with the past now, because salary of individual increasing because of productivity increasing, more technology, something like that. Secondly, way of transportation, or those kind of airplane, like a bullet train, or those kinds of increasing, those kind of things happening. Therefore, global transfer of those kind of music library is more likely. Therefore, compared with the past, currently, usually people can have access to the domestic concert, global concert. Taylor Swift come to your country, another will be happier. Those kind of things thing is happening. In that kind of situation, if interaction, formative power is important, that is already amplified in our society, therefore that is better. Secondly, we say in terms of formative power, human interaction is more down on our side. Best example is Yago and me. Yago sing a song about Aimyon. I know Aimyon song. I cannot speak English and Korean, but because of the music power, I and Yago became friends. The reason why Yago know Aimyon is more accessibility to the more niche song of the Japanese things, right? If it's in the past, like maybe Yago might not just know the K-pop, but they don't know about Aimyon, but because the music is globalized, people know about it. Therefore, like I and Yago has different culture, but I became friends with Yago. Then I share those kind of music. Therefore, like those kind of like accessibility will amplify the power of music. Secondly, political usage of music, they try to say, anthem or something like that. I will sing intuition pump. 大好きなのはひまわりの種 which is a like Hamutaro's song which used for a political rally in the Thailand, Vietnam or whatever because those kind of music is transcended through our accessibility argument. They are resonated with those kind of people. This means that because of accessibility, because of more like globalizations, people can understand another culture singing songs. They can utilize it to the political rally to unite. This means that in order to transformative power, outside also have it. At the best, it's wash. For those reasons, they cannot win by their criteria. Then let's move on to importance of diversity and like accessibility. My partner already told you how diversity and accessibility amplified. Also, they conceded because they said commercialization or something like that. Already they conceded that there are many access to many people. Then this is important because in order to maximize the power of music, you should have choices. Because when there are choices, you can feel this music is for me. There are many amount of music, classic, jazz, rock, QT street. Then I actively choose this to listen to. You think so. Even if it is addiction, even if that is a commercial activity, but you can feel your autonomy because you have your device, you have your platform of the Netflix, Spotify, something like that. Then, even if that is recommended, still you can feel through the many options. I chose this. That is a moment you can feel. That is my song. That is my anthem. That is why I like Nakajima Miyuki Faito. I think like there are many things, there are many songs, but when I actively make choices to listen to the old song encourages me to give fight. In that kind of occasion, that my feeling to be empowered will be amplified because I feel my autonomy, because I think this is my choice, my preferable choices. Therefore, when the subjectivity of like power of music is arbitral, this arbitral will be amplified by the power of choices. Therefore, this argument is very important. Lastly, power of music will be amplified through nostalgia, legendary things. First premise is popular, powerful song will remain, like classic, Beatles, Queen, like Michael or something like that, because that is demand is strong. Okay.
So, do you think the average fan of Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar listened to his other songs about police brutality and the albums he created that won a Nobel Prize?
Yeah, if there is a chance, they will do that, right? Even if they don't have chance, it is okay. At least they can believe I chose this song. Then, second thing say. Then, this will power over those favorite popular songs in the past will be amplified for two reasons. Firstly, the fact music remain give special meaning to the music. For example, this is a masterpiece which survived also society, in current society. The Queen song, Beatles song in the past famous. There are many competition, but still we like Queen song, like a Beatles song. Then still those songs are written in the music curriculum book. Then the Inoue Yosui, Yume no Nakae or something like that. Then new young people can be aspire those kind of old things, and older people can think, oh, my music also still remain power. They also you can feel the power of those kind of music. That's why this kind of like attachment of those kind of legendary masterpiece exists. Secondly, feeling of nostalgia amplify the power of music. Not only the quality of music, but you feel attachment. When I was young, I listened to the songs. Then you will be reminded that like springtime of your life. That is happening, especially when the time has passed. Then this will happen in any ages, right? 19th century, 18th century, 20th century. That's like okay. By definition, increase. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, BLO, for that wonderful remark. Now, continuing the debate, let's invite government whip. Here.
Judge, I feel like being a fan of a certain type of culture or a certain type of artist is simply not enough to actually say that there's power within music. To be able to dance TikToks like dances on social media does not mean that you truly understand what type of culture is being represented here or what kind of message is being said within the music. And that is why I believe that no matter how much English English pop songs you are fans of, or no matter how much K-pop that you actually watch, you're not actually able to make a difference in this case. Other than this, I'm going to explain my speech two things. First of all, why does the access and globalization of, for example, of these music does not actually matter for power? And second off, why the quantity of music within the status quo right now does not matter on the other hand. Firstly then, an individualism, on the idea that on access does not matter. We think that there's already a lot of echo chambers that were already talked down the bench about why they exist. It's overall because diverse opinions within music are mostly unheard in the status quo. This is for a few following reasons. First of all, there's a lot of social media based, and there's algorithms that tend to base towards what you already believe in. Second off, there are political monopolies and censorships that try to get rid of your ability to hit sway a lot of political views or different try to put out messages. This looks like things from, for example, sites that support certain parties, or for example, record dealers that do not want a lot of conflict. Lastly then, on the topic of consumerism also means that you're chained to particular companies to talk about a certain theme and not talk about other things. Lastly then, even if the popular ones do reach people in terms of talking about and problems that they want to say, these are under the guise of having commercialization being taken part in this. This means that it's overall going to be consumed for example, the melody or the virality of it, the profit you can get from it, and just the coolness of being able to support and listen to this popular music everyone else also listens to. This means that messages inherently are not going to be taken seriously by the popular songs. And notice this is important because the popular songs are the only ones that actually reach the majority of people. This is important because the only way they can win is to say that they have people collectively come together for a certain cause. If people are not listening to the same type of music, which I'll explain why music is so important to unite people, then they're not able to say that they're able to unite people for change in the first place. This means that you're notice how people only foster change when you truly are really angered by a cause that isn't already represented in the status quo. You feel like it represents you and you feel the need to actually provide justice towards these things. And notice this is because other people haven't done this. And you have you're only able to make change if you have others also come along with you to make a change in the first place. Because if you not actually make a dent in people, you're probably not going to put as much effort into it. Notice why this does not happen, because Luigi already listed multiple reasons why. Firstly then, just because someone listens to, for example, Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us does not mean that people make a big change against pedophilia. This looks like, for example, how people mostly laughed towards the song and didn't take it as seriously. And they reprimanded Kendrick and Kendrick only and not other pedophiles that already exist. They moved on a year later and ultimately nothing truly came of it. No thank you. Second off then, we think that there's already people who are in the works of current movements. For example, if you're making a song talking about police brutality for African Americans, there are already a lot of Black Lives Matter movements that are already helping towards the causes. So you as a listener do not feel as much of a need to actually put as much effort to solve this movement. Thirdly then, we think that the upsurge of music, as talked about down the bench, overall means that you have less sharing inherently. This means that people don't listen to music for the meaning anymore and typically just look at it for mostly because of the normalization of commercialization. I'll take it later. Lastly then, even if music does actually become more global, this also means that there's going to be more cultural appropriation. For example, having K-pop use a lot of rap within their songs and the status quo. This means that cultural appropriation is specifically harmful because of three things. First of all, the original creators of this type of rap, for example, are not given as many credits, so they are not compensated for their future. Second off, the average consumer is disengaged from the context of the culture. And thirdly, the content is ultimately going to be distorted, so the amount of change they're able to make through having cultural appropriation is not as large. Lastly then, I'll take your POI though.
Thank you. Why songs for minority is not restricted in the 20th century? Anyway, restricted.
Songs in the minorities are not restricted to the 20th century. What? Okay, wait, I'll expound to that later. Second off then, on the idea that what quantity really does not matter on this debate, is the idea that notice how there's a lot of preemption that came from Luigi in his first speech. This is the idea that the upsurge of music, which is basically the increase in quantity, overall inherently means that people don't really want to share with others. This means that for so many people have different tastes and to the point where like sharing is embarrassing because it's not as popular. This means, for example, how Elo already started his speech talking about niche songs, things that people do not listen to and you yourself find interesting. So if you truly wanted to share with people and you think that people don't enjoy the same music, you're probably not going to do that in the first place. And other than that, even if you do show it to other people, they probably will not understand or actually like appreciate this type of music for the type of topic that this is. Notice how this is very important because the only way they can win in this debate is if they focus on niche songs, because niche songs are the only ones that are not commercialized and not controlled by people, which I'll explain later why they might actually be able to be controlled, and like even if you don't believe that. That means that to appeal to most of opposition's examples are not actually going to be are going to apply to the analysis I just gave, especially since Elo started a speech with niche songs. Second off, why niche songs are probably also going to be even though they're not commercialized, they're also probably going to be censored in the status quo right now. This is because niche songs are made by people who are also niche, not very powerful, not popular, not with a lot of fans. So the ability and the accessibility for you to actually censor the type of messages that these minorities are trying to talk about is very large because they ultimately have less power than you. Thirdly then, obscure messages you as an artist, regardless of whether you're niche or popular or not, you have an incentive to obscure the really dark messages that you probably have within your music. Not only because you'll probably get censored, but because your audience generally does not want to hear about these types of topics if they want to relax on a summer day, listening to music. They can only win if they can actually prove that they have popular and overall globalized, and everyone appreciates a music that hasn't been tampered with commercialization, and that is simply what they have not been able to do. And notice this is important because there is absolutely no awareness if you cannot get people to unify. This is important because of three things. This is the main thing that we bring towards you. Firstly, how movements unite in the first place. People are ultimately going to be unified by focusing on music. It's because music is one of the only ways that you can have a lot of passion. You feel like you're fighting for a cause with something that's positive. You listen to music and think it sounds great and it associates with the type of cause you're fighting for. Second off, commercialization overall gets rid of the messages you're trying to say, and that is the majority of the songs that exist right now. And third of all then, lastly, how individualism, even if it does give you mutual happiness, it does not give you the collectivization you need for awareness. Therefore, I'm very proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Gilbert, for that wonderful remark. Now calling for next, let's invite the opposition with Kia.
Music is medium which connects you to aggregation of message, rhythm, history, and emotions. We get to increase the power of language when we innovate books. Now, we get to increase the power of music when we innovate the methods to preserve music into the reasonable, permanent, and diversified medium very proud to oppose. What we had from government side, they said, sharing music and the power of collectivism. Here's our 4 responses. Firstly, it's true, but the power is much stronger on opposition side. In government, you collectivize people in the street, but it's ephemeral and temporal completely. So you never preserve such power of collective human beings into anymore. The street fulfilled with energy is nothing in the tomorrow. You just see the empty street on the tomorrow days. But furthermore, we produce living humans at that street, forget biologically, or die out. So there's nothing remain. But on our side, you can activate such energy whenever you playback such music, whenever you press the buttons like your screen of the phone. You remember why people collectivize, why people exist in such a concert of the street or any places. Whenever you live, any age you live in, you will easily connect yourself to such moment again and again. Furthermore, we produce, Hyun-san already explains why nostalgia is about additional value in these motions. When you recognize the different atmosphere from current atmosphere where you live in, you're likely to feel it's more sharp, it's much stronger atmosphere, and it's much stronger nostalgia than when you live in such a same atmospheres. That's why we are likely to feel more good Beatles or something like from the Beatles than the past peoples. Furthermore, we can share the music more diversified, more easily on our side. On government side, if you don't know that music, You cannot join such a movement. You cannot collectivize people, which means those who can collectivize is only those who share the culture, live in the same geographies. But on our side, now we know that music beyond geography, beyond color of skin, beyond identity and cultures, any women can empower themselves using Taylor Swift, regardless of your skin, regardless of your cultures. That's why it is much more stronger. We are likely to have a more further availability of the movement and much stronger movement. Furthermore, we point out, DPM said, movement use like commercial music, that's so fucking unlikely. Movement will create their own music, the most suitable music for them, for their message and their purpose. Even if you are poor, even if you are obese, since music production is democratized by the PC and the internet, you can create it because it is very cheap. But furthermore, we put your PM said, regulation exists. Regulation is much stronger in the government side because music is able to exist because on their side, music is able to exist only in person, which means it's much fucking easier for the police to such a crackdown such a places. But on our side, internet allow you to express your emotions secretly and anonymously. You can express such a things into any places. You can do it again and again. It is more difficult for the police to regulate it. For those reasons, we completely flip their argument. Even in their own metric, we still win this debate. We have more fucking collective such a power in the music on our side. Yes.
So nostalgia for the Beatles and Michael Jackson proves that people are tired with diluted and mainstream songs that are highly filtered, commercialized, and also performative to the extent that they might have social justice themes.
We accumulate such a things on our side. So as time goes on, we have more numbers of such a memories. We have more numbers of such a power again and again. So yeah, that's it. Yeah. Then, but furthermore, even if I somehow agree with such a music was mainly created in such a moment, the current generation is still stronger because, for example, like the reason why Taylor Swift or anything else becomes so famous is because we accept the difference of people on current generations, right? So things like globalization allow us to connect each other. This cultural difference also likely to be a reason why our side is better. Cool. Then lastly, what democratization of music allow you? Music is again aggregation of feeling, language, rhythm with atmosphere, and something which is difficult to verbalize and conceptualize. I want to firstly mention the analogy of the books. Like people have a different language within you. You're like based on your identity and based on your context. So when you touch the various types of the books after a book is innovated, you can easily find the best books which verbalize your feeling, which verbalize your identity. You feel like it is reflected to you so well, and you are likely to feel much stronger power than the fucking Bibles which is very far from you. This is the reasons. This is the same analogy to the music. After you find the best music which represents your feelings, something which is very difficult to verbalize, you're likely to feel much more strong power. You're likely to feel it is so good and so on. But furthermore, so this is the first reason and why I will already take this debate. This is the most important power in this motions, and this is the most prerequisite things in this debate, and we clearly take this space. But furthermore, we put yours, even if we accept sharing is important, sure, it might be true because on their side, even if you like something like weird music, like something very minority music, you're unlikely to validate your feeling because it is denied by majority. Majority listen to the same music again and again. Even if you find some music which looks like best to you, it's very hard for you to validate it. But rather, we are likely to feel I might be weird. I should go to the same street. I should go to the majority. But versus on our side, you're likely to, even if it is a minority music, you're likely to realize it is listened by many people in the YouTube, like it is not like Saisei Kaisu is written in such a places. You're likely to feel, you can easily find even if I'm very different from the majority, my words is already verbalized in such a social, the internet and so on. You're likely to much easily find such a places. But furthermore, we put you're likely to feel like your emotion is validated by the other people. The other people also exist who have the same emotions and atmosphere, something like that with you. Furthermore, we put you can, if you want, you can also go to the community by yourself. You can just go to the Twitter or anything else, X or anything else. You can easily share such emotions, share the energy with you. This is very, very good things. But lastly, furthermore, we put their response was about commercialization is so bad. Shuya-san already explained why this is so good. You can that is just reasons why you feel so attractiveness to such a cutie street or anything else. But furthermore, we put it exists on the numeric numerically large number. Even Koreans and even Japan listen to the QT straight, so we simply have a more number of the people listen to that, so their own metric, we take this debate. Very proud to pause. Well, yeah.
Okay, I thank opposition for that wonderful remark. Now to conclude the opposition bench, let's invite the opposition reply. Here.
So there's three things to talk about. First on accessibility, on the diversification, and last one to the political impacts, social movements. First on accessibility. I think the accessibility also makes a big power. The opposition week response was that you cannot exactly understand what's the meaning or behind this music, for example, and therefore you are less likely to feel power. That is obviously false, because even have no capacity to understand how the actual Korea looks like, but still you can communicate with it based on the K-pop music, for example, and their style has. I'd also point out, if you think that this musical the melody is sort of beautiful enough, you are likely to repeat that music and trying to get emotional solace, which also gives some motivation to live tomorrow, and also which is exactly the power in the first place. I'd also suggest, if you think that you hear this Taylor Swift music, you're likely to feel you're strong enough to give the hope, get the hope to the future, and therefore you're trying to get the motivation in the workplaces. And that means I'd suggest, even if you can get in worst case scenario, the music version is also commercialized, which is enough to give the motivation to tomorrow at the end of the day. Therefore, it's unclear, therefore, why commercialization necessarily, removes the power as they suggest. Therefore, this accessibility flies, and I think the almost zero response to our case. Secondly, on to diversification. We also told you, it's far more likely because of unique technology you can get in the 21st century, you can guarantee the far more diverse art, which actively diverse music, which actually match your preference, which also gives it's also very personalized in this way. This looks, for example, when you're breaking up your girlfriend, for example, you could find the best music, which actively, to remove your stress, for example, by because of that music we told you in the debate. What's the response? Firstly, they say that this minority arts are regulated, and therefore it is unlikely you can get diversification here. Firstly, we told you in the government, it is also enormously difficult to crack down on this in the first place, because now in 21st century, governments have no capacity to center the audio music in Spotify, for example. It's unclear therefore the regulation actually works on their style has. But secondly, though, this is the comparative, because we told you, compared to the 19th century, regulation is much easier for you to do that. Black African Americans music likely censored on their style has. By contrast on their side, obviously regulation is very, very difficult. That's why we can flip this at the end of the day. Then they say, it is very commercialized, therefore diversification is unlikely to be achieved. It is also false. It's because of that commercial incentive, the market will likely increase. For example, if the commercial incentive exists, the K-pop industry have an incentive to monetize that K-pop music and to try to make this music to reach out to global wide in the first place. That's why I would suggest, if the commercial incentive exists, that is the point at which you can guarantee the far more diversification at the end of the day. It's unclear why, because this is it's also bad thing their style has. Therefore, I would suggest the diversification as well as accessibility gives the power in the debate, which is obviously debate winning impacts. Secondly, though, let's talk about the social movements. There are multiple anti-premise opening up in this case. Firstly, they say the movements lose the capacity to unite the music on their side has. It's unclear why the movements have an incentive to choose that commercialized version of music. Obviously, movements can make their own music. Movements can make choose the best music in the first place. It's unclear to me why the movements can choose the best version of their music even in the 20th century. Secondly, so even if this is commercialized, but it is enough to drive the many women on the ground in terms of feminism, for example. The reason why the people feel enormously emotional solace by listening to the Taylor Swift music is because Taylor Swift is enough to give the hope to many working class people on the ground. Yes, she might be commercialized, but it is enough to give the driving force and their style has. It's unclear to me why therefore the commercialization necessarily bad thing, or is enough to divide the movements and their style as well. Lastly, though, movement is not only sources about the music. Music is in everything, right? For example, on the street, for example, daily livelihood, you can access that music in the first place. It's unclear therefore as to why on the metrical social movements they might win in the debate because by proving their own logic, but that's not the reasons why they can prove that is decrease on their side. It's very clear therefore. Open.
Thank you very much for reply for that wonderful remark. Now to conclude the debate, let's invite the government reply. Here.
If people tried to do what the Stonewall riots did, the civil rights movement or the anti-war movement like in Vietnam, like what I asked about, with blasting music on the streets, like what they said in terms of accessibility, then it would come in the form today of a pride parade that is sponsored by Pepsi, that is family friendly, that is likely to reach the people in Manhattan in their apartments who will likely just turn on their noise cancelling headphones and turn the other cheek. I want to be very clear on what this debate is about because they tried to do a cheat at UP when they tried to redefine what the power of music is. That if it's spread more, that if there are more choices, then that necessarily means music is more powerful. But if you read the debate in the motion, it was the power that was created and established from the 20th century and the way in which that power changes, whether it transformed in a good way or in a negative way that declined it. And as we preempted and as we established in this debate, we said that power is defined through grassroots movements, defined through the agency and the production process, and also your ability to be able to consume that media in a way that is personally powerful without other people intervening in the process of you interpreting and also creating and also responding to that art. And so, when we made a POI against them that said that, oh, the Billboard Top 100, all of other, not the music of Kendrick Lamar, or we talked about how it whipped when we responded to them and said that it was very likely that your music would be commercialized to the extent of A, the way in which it is commodified through companies who likely want to try and go down to the lowest mainstream, lowest common denominator, or B, it is likely satirized and also done in a way to try and, dilute the way this culture is represented through cultural appropriation, which necessarily also distinguishes them from the original creators who created that music and created that culture, and also is done in a way that distorts that music too, then by all means, give them the accessibility argument. But the accessibility argument doesn't represent power of music. Why? We said a few things on Gov that they tried responding to. One, we said that the way in which people respond to it in culture, in person, it is much harder to regulate. What was their response to this? They said that, well, the way it's regulated on Gov in the 20th century is that the police would be more powerful. They could spread it on the internet. But the internet is also regulated. As we said, it's regulated through intellectual property rights and also through Creative Commons and also through Spotify. It is also done through algorithms and also through recommendations. The music that people choose and what they consume necessarily is also mediated. So there's very little control over your echo chambers that you choose. But in person, like what we established early on, the flexibility was more personal, more local. That's the concession we gave at DPM. At DPM, we said it is good that it is local. It is good that you own it for yourself. Sometimes, like the Beatles, it might spread to more people, but sometimes we argued that that probably was bad. But it was better in the 20th century to the extent in which it was a global movement that was cathartic because there was only one Live Aid. And so when DLO says, oh, there's more concerts, therefore that's better and more powerful for more people, right? No, because every concert you create is just more money consumed from the same consumers, the same fans, the same music again, compared to a Live Aid, like what we talked about, which is more of a pivotal moment in history that allowed individuals to redefine what that music was for them and for their communities. On Gov, if you wanted to talk about creating music for yourself, defining it on the terms of your community, from your experiences, from your suffering, you do it in a way that was done so on Gov. When in the 20th century, it was done through radio, through waves that were harder to regulate. It was done without state sponsorship and state intervention through the internet and surveillance. It was done without the internet. It was done at minimum, at least a little bit harder for people to use noise cancelling headphones to stop listening to you. And so we scream on Gov, we shout on Gov, and we will never stop playing our music as loud as we can. I'm very proud to propose.
Okay, thank you very much, Governor Schnei, and thank you very much all debaters for the wonderful round. We shake hands across the table, and me and my panels will just go to a different room while we get both ready, and take away I'll go to closure from each other.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.